Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Shameless Sex Podcast. This is your bonus episode. I'm here with myself, with April, with Legend. Hi, her dog.
Hello.
And then we also have James Palacio here, also known as Fiona St. James. And James, we had the pleasure of meeting at the Sex Expo in Brooklyn, which we go to every single September. And he sent us his new book, his memoir called The Life and Crimes of Fiona St. James. And he is here to tell us all about his life, all the adventures he's been on as an escort. He's also done erotic massage and massage work. He has also done drag, and hence the name Fiona St. James. And he'll talk a little more about how he got into that. So before we dive in, I will also read you the bio so you know a little more about James Palacio. Born and raised in New York City, this Spanish and Italian Bronx-born native entered the world of female impersonating and escorting in the 90s. His drag persona, Fiona St. James, has experienced success in nightclubs worldwide, as well as being the 15th elected and still the only Latina Empress of the Imperial Court of New York. He's appeared in film on To Wong Foo, thanks for Everything Julie Newmar, love that movie, Stonewall, Ugly Betty, and Orange is the New Black. And his most memorable role was playing the resident prison tranny bitch on the hit HBO series Oz for 5 of the 6 seasons. Love it. His adventures in drag and escorting inspired him to write his memoirs, where he shared stories about pushing boundaries and raising eyebrows sexually, professionally, and personally with no shame for over 30 years. To learn more, visit FionaStJames.com. That's FionaStJames.com. Welcome, James, aka Fiona. We love having you on the show. Hola, James.
Hey, gals. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. Yay.
Yeah, we're excited to have you here, and our listeners love everything from learning to hearing real life experiences in the realms of sexuality, especially in worlds that they might not be immersed in themselves. So can you tell our listeners, I know you have a whole memoir on this, but just a little bit about your journey, about how you got into the world of escorting drag and to the life that you're in today.
Well, the interesting part with that was it was never anything that I even thought I wanted to do. But, growing up in New York City, Hollywood always glamorizes prostitution. So I remember being a child and, seeing these movies with high-class escorts and mink coats and limousines. And it just kind of was appealing to me because, who doesn't like material things, right? So at the age of 20, I was home and I was looking at the back of the Village Voice and I saw an ad for an escort agency. And I thought, I believe that everyone should try everything at least once in life. So at the age of 20, I answered this escort ad. I went and had the easiest, most amazing experience with this very nice man that, sexually speaking, we didn't even really do much of anything other than, kind of jerk each other off and touch each other. And I just remember that feeling of walking down the corridor of the Marriott Marquis with $200 in my pocket and thinking, oh my God, this was the easiest, most wonderful thing I'd ever done. And in my mind, I pretty much thought I was done with it. Fast forward 2 years later, I graduate college, and there's that question, now what are you going to do with your life? And I had just started dressing in drag a couple of months before that particular summer. Again, not for any reason. It was just sort of accidental, where I'd been going to Fire Island and I'd seen all these drag queens, and I would say, I'm pretty with makeup. I could probably do that. So I started doing drag that summer. I competed in a contest. I didn't win, but 5 days later, I had my first paid professional booking and realized, oh, I can make a shitload of money doing this. And I'm really kind of pretty. So at that point, I needed to move out of my parents' house because, I'm gay, I'm dressing in drag. And my father, even though he knew all of that, we had words. So I decided, well, I need to make money fast. So I went back to the Village Voice, saw an escort ad, an agency looking for escorts, and I answered that one, met with the guy, the madam or sir for that matter, and that very first night, I had my first escort client, and lo and behold, it was the same man that I had been with 2 years before, the guy named Danny. He was still at the Marriott Marquis. He was still as ugly as sin. he was still easy and breezy. And I was like, oh my God, it was like really kind of wonderful that my first official experience was with the same man that I had done 2 years before. And it was magical. I mean, magical because, it wasn't anything that suddenly I was unnerved and anything that made me feel bad about anything. It was just this wonderful experience. And then fast forward the next like 3-4 weeks, I was like several clients today, and in a matter of like 5 weeks, 3-4 weeks, I think I had like 6-7 grand cash in my pocket, and I moved out of my parents' house. And I've sort of been doing it, on and off and pretty full time for the most part ever since. So that like in both cases, it was sort of like I never thought, oh, I want to be an escort or I want to do drag. It just all sort of happened. And I was like, this is actually what I'd love to do.
You're like, why didn't they offer a course on this in college? Actually, I would have used that.
It's true. Well, I had been wearing makeup my whole life really as a guy because I'd been doing community theater since I was a teenager. And like, I've always been what they call like the pretty boy. I'm not very big. I'm like 5'4.5", 135. So I've always been the smooth, cute, boyish type. And I was always the one that like people would say, oh, excuse me, miss. And then say, oh my God, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were a guy. And that would happen, especially like during intermission, when I would be doing whatever playing, I'd go use the men's room, but I'd have makeup on, boy makeup, but makeup nonetheless. And that would happen. So I think I always knew I was pretty with makeup on. And, I'm one of these queens that I love women. Like most of my best friends are women. My two best friends are my sisters and my mother. And so when I dress up, I'm all about wanting to look as pretty as possible and pay homage to women because I think women rock and most men are a pain in my ass, frankly.
And drag can be so empowering, and I know that you love escorting as well. And on both of those, I think extracurricular activities / you're getting paid to do both as well are empowering for most. But can you tell our listeners what you love about escorting and also what you love about drag? Because you can tell you have a passion for it, and I would love to see you in drag.
Oh my God, you guys have to come to my next show when you're in New York. So, okay, let's start with the escorting. You hit the nail on the head. It is the most empowering thing to actually be with someone and get paid for your time. And in my case, I think because I'm such a specific type, the men that hire me are usually exactly what I like anyway. They tend to be the opposite of me. So I think there's this misconception that anyone who has to hire an escort is because they're ugly or they're this or they're that and they can't get it any other way. Well, honey, I'm here to tell you, 85% of my clients, I would give it to them for free. Now, granted, well, let's not go that far. Yeah, but apart from the fact that the money part of it is empowering and it's, you're providing a service. I've been fortunate where, I've never had my life in danger. I've never had any client try to stiff me or like not pay me. And like some of the hottest men I have been with have paid me. And some of the hottest sex I've had have been with clients. So to me, I'm kind of having my cake and eating it too, or having my cake and they're eating me too, usually. Because I am, after all, a bottom, in case you didn't figure that out. And for you listeners who don't know the whole terminology of top, bottom, let me educate you. The top is the one that does the fucking, if I'm allowed to say
the doer.
Yeah. Yes, and the bottom is the receiver. So as the receiver, I'm fortunate that 9 out of 10 escort clients I would probably do anyway. And in terms of my massage work, I would say about 75% of my clients are massage calls. So, and to me, that's almost a little easier because I do give you a legitimate massage. I mean, I have my massage table and everything, just, the last 10 minutes, turn over, and then, happy ending. Who doesn't love a happy ending, right? Me and Walt Disney are tight, I've always said.
Yeah.
So, and so I do that, but honestly, like, whatever they want, I'm going to do. So for me, I love it because it's me providing therapy, for a lack of a better term. Like, I feel escort work is like doing sex therapy. And, and also in my case, I hate to say this, but 95% of my clients identify as straight married men. And the unfortunate reality is that I think too many people, after they get married, think that means, okay, now we don't have to have sex. So, I hear this from my clients all the time, where their wives don't necessarily put out, which I'm like, okay, well, better for me, because then they come at me and I get to make money.
And they're also people who might be closeting their hetero flexibility or their bisexuality, or, they might identify as straight, but they're an interest in exploring beyond the, society's rules of the straight realm. And so it becomes the, closeted, secretive thing, as opposed to a thing that is embraced. And so, yeah, it is a therapeutic service on all fronts, whether it's just providing pleasure or orgasm for someone, or connection. I mean, we had, I don't know. I think by the time this comes out, we already recorded with Alice Little, who is a legal sex worker in the brothel, one of the brothels in Nevada, and she was saying so much of her stuff just is about connection and intimacy. People are just craving for it. So, and I'm sure it's different for everyone in terms of why people are going to different forms of sex work. So, but yeah, hats off to you. We're big fans of all forms of sex work, as long as, sex workers choosing it for themselves. And so with drag, so for folks, I mean, they've already heard you talking about dressing up in clothing that is a female impersonation, I guess. And can you tell us, this is what it feels like to do drag? Like, I know you said that you love wearing the makeup and that whole thing, but you've done film and other aspects of acting and showbiz, but what does it feel like to go and do drag?
Well, you know what? The most amazing thing with that is, I think any evolved human being should embrace both their masculine and feminine side. So for me, I feel like the fact that I dress up makes me that much more complete as just a human being who embraces both sides of me. Honey, I'm not the butchest thing on the planet. I admit that. But it's okay. I don't have to be, because, the whole drag thing it's really just a further extension of who I am. So, but it enables me to go that extra mile, because you're wearing all of the hair, the makeup, the wigs, and, I get to embrace that part of me and, be a little more exaggerated or be a little more out there, adventurous. And it kind of ties in with the whole sexual side of me, because, I'm the hugest flirt you'll ever meet as a guy, but when I'm in drag, honey, it's like 10 times that much. But, so I enjoy that part of it. My persona in drag has always been a bit provocative and sexual anyway. And so, I'm not one of these queens that like wants to be all regal and, I want to wear like the slinkiest thing with taste. But, I got curves. And if you're a beautiful woman, even if you're dressing as a woman, why not show off what you have? So, the love of it for me is being able to embrace that part of me. And as I said before, paying homage to women, because, I'm much more of a fan of women in terms of just like friends and, having in my life, the majority of my closest friends are female. Sometimes with queens, they could either, there's a little bit of competition there, which I don't believe in competition. I think the planet is big enough for everyone to be fierce and fabulous. So if you're amazing, I'm happy for you. But don't hate a bitch just because she is too. Because that's what some people do.
I want to get a shirt that says that. Don't hate a bitch because she is too.
Yeah. I like that. I love that. And so for our listeners, listen, I'm not going to define this perfectly because there's some terminology. People are like, okay, what's the difference between, a trans woman and someone in drag and someone who's cross-dressing too? And so drag for you, a trans woman or trans person, transgender individual is someone that feels that their gender identity doesn't match what the sex that they were assigned to at birth, or the body that they might be in. And so this is a gender identity thing. Cross-dressing is someone who might like to wear, and I'm not going to say all this perfectly, but cross-dressing is someone who might like to wear clothing of what is not the gender, I'm not going to say this perfectly, but the gender that they were assigned in at birth. So it's more, and maybe you can define this, and then drag is something more, that's the performance that you take on?
Correct. Yeah, because I mean, I do it for performance reasons. You know, to me, it was, and also because, you know, I come from a theatrical background. So, and I was a trained dancer, and like all the years that I've done drag, most of the time, all of the shows that I did, I always had backup dancers. So like everything would be staged. You know, I knew the words. You know, there's nothing worse than seeing a drag queen go on stage and they don't even know what the hell they're saying. And they're just moving their mouths. That to me, I don't understand. There's some of that out there. I don't know if so much these days, but back then that was a little more prevalent. So for me, it was definitely about performance reasons. And, you know, when you're in drag, what ends up happening is I would get hit on a lot by straight guys who would then want to take me home. And the whole thing with me was it was never really a sexual thing for me. It was always where, okay, once the show is over, I want to go home and take all this shit off and be the cute gay guy that I am. But, you know, I have had it happen where I've had a couple of clients who met me as James, or as my escort name, Bobby, is because Robert is my middle name, so I like to keep it real. So I was like, I'm going to be Bobby St. James and Fiona St. James, and I'm in drag, because then at least the James is my name, the Bobby is my middle name. So it just kept it all a little real. And then the whole saint part was just the irony of it all, because I'm so not a saint. And I've always said, if being on my knees makes me religious, I ought to be a saint. So, and that's why.
We have a t-shirt that says that too.
Yeah.
And that's why I added the saint to my name, for that exact reason. But so what I was going to say before was that the sexual part of me, I mean, I have two really amazing drag sex stories that I could dive into now if you want to hear them.
Yes, that was one of our questions that we wanted to ask you.
Yeah, so the whole top bottom thing, obviously I'm a bottom. When I dress as a woman, you treat me like a woman. And a woman usually is not the one doing the fucking, because she doesn't have a penis. But I had an escort client as Bobby, who then was like, you're really pretty. Do you ever dress up? And I just started dressing up, and I was like, yeah. So the next time he saw me, he made it very specific that he wanted to see me dressed in drag. So I looked amazing. I had this beautiful dress on, the hair, the makeup, the whole bit. And this man was like 6'2", 200 pounds, built like a shit brick house, beautiful cock, just exactly what I love. You know, I like a hunky built man. If you're going to be with me, look like a man, for God's sakes. And this man looked like this hot man. And then before I knew it, he wanted me to penetrate him. And I was like, huh? Like, I was so looking forward to him doing me. And lo and behold, I was so turned on by him that was the first time ever in my life that I was the one who was the top. So go figure that it took me to dress as a woman to finally play the part of a man with a man, which I just kind of thought was, that's a bit ironic. And that doesn't happen very often because, you know, it's not my natural inclination. So I have to truly be turned on by someone to do that. And this man was exactly what I liked. And, you know, that kind of holds true with a lot of my clients. A lot of them, I'm like, wow, you're like really hot in my opinion. And, you know, because they are the opposite of me. And the opposite of me is what I like sexually. So, you know, but like I said before, you just got to look at me. And usually if you like me, you're not some bottom looking for a top and thinking that that's what I am.
I love how you didn't get stuck in your own story of I'm a bottom, I can't do this, and you took charge. So really, that's amazing.
Well, and part of that also is, you know, the money turns you on. It caught me off guard, but you know, guess if someone turns you on that much, then I'm like, I guess I'm a little more versatile than I thought. And you know, and then the other like fun story that I have with drag and escorting is that I've been known for dressing as Marilyn Monroe since I started doing drag, which was 1987 actually. So it's been a number of years. I had this client, it was a referral through a friend who wanted to hire me as Marilyn Monroe. So I went in the 7-year-itch dress, went to the Waldorf Astoria, you know, and this man, again, he was like hot, big, nice cock, beautiful body, but he was a bit of a bad drunk and like nothing happened. I became like his therapist, you know, sat there and he was like crying because like his wife and his son. And I'm not going to get into that because it was all a little sad, but I was there for him. And he kind of like passed out, but paid me my $500 first. So I got my money. So there I am in the 7-year itch dress. An hour later, he like passes out, and so I leave the Waldorf. I come out of the elevator, and the Waldorf Astoria has that long ass hallway before you get to the stairs. So I'm there with $500 with my dressed the way I was. And I kind of felt that someone was looking at me, and I turned back, and it was the security guy with the coily thing in his ear. I didn't think anything of it. I looked back, and the man's walking towards me. All of a sudden, I like pick up my pace. He picked up his pace. And all of a sudden I panicked and I started running in my 4-inch slingbacks. And this man is chasing me down the stairs. It's out of the Waldorf Astoria. And I wasn't exactly sure why I was even running. All I know is I jumped into the cab and said, go. And the cab takes off and hits some red light. And the man literally came running up to the cab. Oh, no. And at that point, the light turned green and the cab took off. And I'm such a brazen bitch that the client, right before I left, said, will you come back tomorrow night dressed the same exact way? Which I did.
You did? Oh.
I sure did, because I was like $500 later. And this man, Dave was his name, so you get a visual feel. So Dave hired me like once or twice a month for like the next 3-4 years. Like this man like paid my rent basically and furnished my apartment. And the sad part is we never like did anything. I was literally like his therapist. I'd go, we'd order room service, we would talk. He would maybe be kissed a little, but I was like, it's the easiest $500 that I ever made. I almost felt a little guilty taking his money because I'm like, we're really not doing anything, but honey, I'm a lot of things, but I ain't dumb.
You were making more than the actual therapists do out there.
Business therapist. Yeah.
I really was, but it was great. But being chased out of the Waldorf Astoria, I think, was one of my proudest moments.
I got chased out of the Waldorf Astoria in my 4-inch heels, and so you went back to the Waldorf Astoria again in the same outfit. And did you ever see the security guard? Do you know?
No, thank God. But I was on the lookout for him.
And then he just heard how great you are.
Yeah,
and he was like, wait, where are you going?
Wait, I want to hire you too.
Well, and I think as an example of that client too, again, like not everyone's hiring to have sex. It might just be to have an experience of being close to someone when they don't have access to that, or as close to someone where there isn't pressure for them to be a certain way or to show up a certain way, or, whatever the reason is. It's so dynamic and so diverse in terms of what people are looking for and what they need. So again, I think I love that you highlighted that. I'm sure that your book probably highlights. I mean, it's a whole book, and I'm already in 20-something pages and already heard a number of stories in there, but you have some wild adventures in there, don't you?
Yes, I do. And the ones I've told you so far are just the ones where I've been paid for. The ones where I haven't been paid are probably even a little crazier. I mean, I've kind of been out there. Like I say early on in my book, if I had to calculate the amount of men that I've been with for free and the amount of men that have paid me, I'd need a small third world nation to raise both their hands just to have enough fingers to count on, because it's a big number.
Well, I mean, I'm sure like that's awesome. You wear it proud, and I'm sure there's a lot of happy people out there that have had your services and that didn't realize you also have services to offer and didn't pay for it, and they're probably stoked too. They're like, oh wow, this person really knows what they're doing.
Yeah, they're lucky, huh?
Yeah, right. What about your dating life? Is it easy for folks that you meet to understand what you do and to accept that, or is it challenging? Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, it's not easy at all, frankly. I mean, it's a little easier now, but I remember like being in my 20s and when I was like really at the height of like dressing in drag and doing all of these club gigs, where like if I heard one more man say to me, what am I supposed to tell my friends, that I'm dating a drag queen? And I'm like, no, you tell your friends that you're dating an actor who happens to be an actress, who happens to be talented. But, there's such a stigma that goes with that, or like, or the fact that I would get paid, whether it was massage work or escort work. It's like, everyone loves that about you, but no one wants to date someone who does that. or because, there's, in their mind, I guess there's a stigma about it. So in my dating world, I mean, the truth of the matter is I have not had great luck. The longest relationships are usually like 6 months to a year. None of them have ever been technically monogamous. I think that's a little harder in the gay world. Even the guys that claim that they want to be, when all is said and done, they're usually not. Now, the irony with me is, when it comes to that, I am a bit old-fashioned when it comes to sex. I think the man should pay for it. No, I'm kidding. No, in my dating world, I am old-fashioned where, like, if I meet someone and if I like you, I tend to just have eyes for you. I almost instinctively go to that. But, I can separate the fact that someone is a client and paying me and then someone else I'm actually dating. But most guys, they don't want to date someone who is in the, sex worker world. Or the flip side to that is they get off on that. And then I always get these tops that suddenly, because I do that, they want to date you, and then they want you to be okay with all of their friends having their way with you. And I'm like, well, that's cute too, but like, are they paying me? Because so it's sort of like, so when all is said and done, so long as I look good and there's a bitch out there with money that wants to pay me, even if I don't need the money, I can always think of something to buy. So I will take her.
I feel your pain there. There's always something to buy. I'm like, seasons change, so I always need the newest thing. Sometimes that's a problem. Amy's helping me with my shopping problem, James.
I always say whoever says money doesn't buy you happiness doesn't know where to shop.
Yeah, I know. It's like, what's wrong with being a billionaire? Nothing. No, nothing. Absolutely nothing is wrong.
Well, until people, only love you for your money in that case. And I mean, that definitely
just
is.
Pay them. Look it out. You could pay James. I'd be like super happy to pay someone that's this free and fun. My friend when I have billions.
So yeah, that's true. You could pay people, and also there's people like James who are actually good, wonderful humans here that I am enjoying his company here. But yes, money can make things much easier, and especially if you're doing it in an empowered way where you fucking love your job and love what you're doing, and you're doing really good things for people. You're helping people.
Can I also say something that might not be super, I don't know, in line with what a lot of folks think? There's a lot of people out there that are in relationships, solid marriages, that one person doesn't work and is free of doing anything and gets like an allowance. It's its own form of sex work. And I always think that. So it's like, you're just out with it and being open, and you're like, I'm making money this way, and it's amazing. And some folks are in a solid partnership marriage, whatever that looks like, and it's the same thing and just wrapped in a different box.
I have always said that. I've always said, you know what? Life is one big call, and we are all pawns and we're prostitutes in this game we call life. Because guess what? You could sit here and have a Monday through Friday 9 to 5 and go work for the big white man, and he's paying you for your time. Or you can do what you just said. You could be in a marriage and be the housewife or house husband who technically is not going out there and getting paid for what they're doing, but you're being supported. So nothing in life is free. Least of all me, usually.
Nope. Yeah, not you. I mean, I would rather suck a nice man's dick that I chose as opposed to the man's dick. Okay.
Exactly, girl. And I had a tonsillectomy 10 years ago just to improve those.
Oh, you did. Nice. Maybe
well, I was.
Maybe that's it. April's like, what's her? You have, was it TMJ or like a?
I have TMJ. I have a lot. Maybe if I would have done the tonsil removal surgery as they wanted me to, but I'm like, I need these tonsils.
Or maybe break your jaw. And just
maybe I could break my jaw, take my tonsils out, and then I could actually deep throat.
Oh, see, I love that. Well, I mean, I was always good at that anyway, but 10 years ago, like suddenly in my 20s, I would always get strep throat. And I call that occupational hazard, because that's when that was when I was in the height of like really turning a lot of tricks. But then I was fine for like 20 years, but then 10 years ago, it started happening again. And I was like, I want these shits out. And I said to my doctor, I need a tonsillectomy. And he said, why? To which I responded, I need more headroom.
Did he know what you were talking about?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because my doctor's totally gay. And I said, no, seriously, I keep getting strep throat. And I had them out like 3 months ago. And suddenly I'm like, wow, I thought I was good before. I'm really good now.
Oh yeah.
I love it.
Well, I'm sure you talk about some of these fun adventures in your book, but can you tell people where they can buy your book and because you sent us a copy and I can't wait to read it. It's a memoir of sorts. And can you just tell us more about it and where they can
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so being born in the Bronx, and I knew I was gay from the second I was born. I was like picked on, called faggot, bullied, but I was like, fuck you. That's not what your mother said last night. Or I would say, your father didn't seem to mind. I always had a comeback for everything because I always get the last words. And don't fuck with me, fellas. So I just, I was in love for the first time when I was in the first grade. I was in love with my sister's fourth grade teacher. Like I always knew what I liked and that I liked men. So when I was 17, I had an affair with my first cousin in Ecuador. His mother and my mother are sisters, and that's the first man I ever kissed, ever did anything with. And I had been basically a depressed virgin leading up to that. So at 17, when that happened, I said, you know what? When you turn 50, you're going to write your memoirs. Because then at that point, I got food poisoning, had an affair with him, lost 25 pounds, and said, you're a fierce queen. Write your life story. So since the age of 22, I journalize my life. Every year of my life, I have a hardcover book, and I document everything that happened. So, and I still do that to date. And hon, I'm going on 55. I ain't no spring chicken anymore. More like fried chicken, but that's the whole other story. But I look good, so who cares? So when I was going on 50, I had been working retail for 25 years, and I quit my job and I went to Denver and basically wrote a book report on my life. It was the most therapeutic thing I ever did because I reread my life, year by year, and it took me 6 months to write the first draft. And the floodgates opened, everything opened up, and I remembered everything. So my book is very graphic. It's very explicit. There's a lot of sex, but it also talks about all of my accomplishments as an actor, as a drag queen, all of the fundraising that I've done. I also speak about the changes that New York City has gone through. Because, I was born in 1965. So when I started in the club scene in the 80s, none of those clubs even exist anymore. So to me, what I love about it also is this historical value. Not only it is ultimately my life story, but it's also where did my life fit into all of these things that were happening in New York City? And, Giuliani turning it into a police state and suddenly, everything shutting down. And then suddenly, sex wasn't as something that you could be as free about, or even all of the drugs, and 42nd Street becoming Disney World. Ugh. I miss the good old days when you had all of that out there. So my book does cover all of that. And, I'm quite proud of it because, it's 400 pages of my life, and it is pretty out there. So I self-published through Amazon. So you can get it on Amazon, but the better thing to do is to go to my website, FionaStJames.com, FionaStJames.com. That way I fill the order and then I get to personalize it and autograph it and mail it to you the same way that I mailed you guys a copy. And what I love is the envelope, because you see how I put all those fucked up, stupid, cute little rubber stamp things on it and stars and lips and hot and bitch and that. So even the envelope to me is like a piece of work. And I have fun just doing even just doing that part of it. And, I get a little more of a cut. The book's not expensive at all. I mean, I don't think books should be, but I'm quite proud of it. And I don't know how many people at 17 said, when I'm 50, I'm going to self-publish my memoirs. And then for me, I actually wrote it. And then once I wrote the first draft, didn't even matter whether I published it or not. It was such a sense of accomplishment that I actually did it. But then I thought, no, I want people to read my story and hear what I have to say, because, I believe in karma. The underlying theme of my book is keep your karma intact. And so long as you're not harming anyone and you're doing good and everyone is a consenting adult, the universe provides. And I have always gotten what I've wanted. I've been living alone my whole life since the age of 22, never had a roommate, never lived with anyone. Don't think I can. even if I got a husband, you better either get us a 2-bedroom or keep your own shit. Separate. That's the only way it's going to last.
Oh, James, you are so much fun. I really have, I feel like I have a little blip of what your book would be like just speaking with you today. And it's just an absolute joy. You're so fun and just lighthearted and shameless in so many beautiful ways. So,
and then when you read the book, there's a lot of shameless stories. You want to hear one fun? Do we have time for one fun sex story?
Yes, of course. Yes.
Okay, good. So I have my top 3. So my top 3 as a guy was number 1 was, and I went to Australia. I went to Australia back in 97 for about a month. And when I went to Sydney, Australia, they have the bathhouse, which, honey, I love bathhouses. Who doesn't, right? So this boy does. So I went to this bathhouse and I was there for 5 hours. And in 5 hours, I had sex with 5 of the hottest men I think I've ever had sex with in my entire life.
Wow.
Because each one of these, yeah, pretty much. So what
Yeah.
would happen is like I met that first one, and the way they were set up was like you would go into these rooms that you walked into that were like a big king size mattress bed, and you would close the door, and then there was like a soap dispenser with lubricant. And then a little tray with condoms. And like the first guy was like 6 feet, 200 pounds, hot as hell. And at the time, you have to remember, this is back in 97. So I was only like 35, maybe. It was like 20 years ago. This man was so beautiful. And he had his way with me. Like you would not believe. 45 minutes later, I was exhilarated. And then I like walked out, went into the shower area because I was like, let me take a shower. And as I'm doing that, I met man number 2. Equally as hot. And that happened pretty much. I spent like 45 minutes with each one. And then when I was like showering for those 10 minutes, I would meet the next guy. By the end of the 5 hours, I had fucked 5 of the hottest men. To date, I still think they're probably the 5 hottest men I've ever had sex with were in Sydney, Australia. So that was between like, I remember it was like 5 to 10 p.m. and it was like 10 p.m. and I was like, wow, I can't even feel the floor. Like I felt like I was floating, and it was the most euphoric state I think I had ever been in my life, you know. And the only other thing that comes, well, I've had a lot of wonderful experiences. The other big thing that happened more recently was in Palm Springs. See, this is why I love traveling. When you travel, shit like that happens. But I was in Palm Springs maybe like 5-6 years ago, and I went to this like big sex party at one of the clothing optional gay houses. And it started like on a Friday night at like midnight. I think I finally stopped at like 6 o'clock Saturday evening. Like I went at it for like 18 hours, and the party had finished at like 8 that morning. But, you know, they had slings everywhere, and it was, you know, just sort of like this whole wonderful brotherhood of guys that were just, you know, if you wanted to be with someone, you were just with them. You know, at one point I ended up in a sling. I am no stranger to slings. I'm a smart boy. I love me a sling. Actually, I just bought one that just arrived. It's sitting over there in the corner from Fort
Weekend
Croft.
Project for you.
Yes. But that particular time in Palm Springs, you know, I did end up in the sling. And it's interesting because when you're a bottom, you really are in control. Like, I think so many people think that, oh, if you're a bottom, and especially a bottom in a sling, then people do whatever they want. That's not the way it works. The bottom is always in control, because if you don't want someone to do anything to you, or do you, they're not going to. So even being in that vulnerable position with your legs up in the air and spread, you can kind of pick and choose who you want. You know, no one's just going to go up there, at least not when I'm in there. Maybe some guys are like that, but I'm a little, again, old-fashioned that way. Honey, I love a cock, but I want to see what it's attached to. You know, don't do me from behind where I can't even see what you look like. It's a bit detached.
You need a website page just for all your like hashtag sayings. Yeah, get the t-shirt, and then, honey, but I think that you have great stories. And I think that folks out there, if you want more juicy James stories, go get his book.
No, get it through my website. Get it FionaStJames.com, and that way I can personalize it.
And he'll personalize it just like he did for us. James, thank you so much for talking with Amy and I about all your sexcapades and what you do, and for spending a little bit of your evening with us. We absolutely love you. You're awesome.
Oh, I love you gals. And, I got such a good vibe from you both at the Sex Expo. And Amy, you were great because I walked right up to you and I was with my friend Selena, who was like, this is my friend James. And I was like, shut up, bitch. I got this.
Well,
and you guys were wonderful. So thank you for having me on.
Thank you, love. And to all of our listeners out there, thank you so much for being part of this shameless sex revolution. We love you so much. Ciao for now.
Bye, ladies. Thanks for tuning in, guys and gals. Mwah.
Don't forget to head on over to our website at shamelesssex.com for more. And for 15% off of some of our favorite sex toys, use coupon code SHAMELESSPP in all caps at purepleasureshop.com.